Good afternoon, fellow Plexers. Today I wanted to show how to use Portainer to set up Plex server on a Synology NAS that's still running DSM6 I think it's 2 now. A NAS that has not been upgraded to DSM7. So I'm going to use a guide by the Marius Hosting website that basically tells you how to get Portainer installed and set up Plex with hardware transcoding for a Synology NAS that supports that. So it needs to be like a DS1019 Plus that I'm using in this example, 918 Plus, any of the 2020 models like the 420 Plus, 720, 920, or 1520 Plus, which is my newer NAS that is already running Plex in a Docker container. So I'll put this link in the description. But basically he teaches you how to get Plex going, how to grab a Plex claim code from your current Plex account if you've already got a server going, how to create the Docker folder. Let's make note, I'm not going to name my Docker folder Plex HW, I'm just going to name it Plex. And he shows you how to create a stack with a Docker compose list in Portainer to get Plex going. So I'm just going to move that out of the way, and like I said, there'll be a link in the description. And what I want to show you first of all is under File Station of this older NAS, I have a Docker folder, and then there's a folder inside that for each of the Docker containers that's running or going to run. So right now the Plex folder is empty. And I also created a media share. And let's see. So one of the problems is when I first bought this NAS, I didn't set it up correctly. I didn't know how to set up folders for Plex Media, and I just have this one big My Media Collection folder, and then there's subfolders in it, and that was my main share. And for this demonstration I created a share called mediaplexdocker, and I just have my default admin and default user account that has access to that folder. So if we're back into the File Station, you can see that I've got these funny looking named subfolders. Well, these are going to represent sort folders for different Plex media libraries. If I go into the movies-libraries, these are 3 individual subfolders again, so I can point individual Plex movie libraries to them. I'll point the main movie library here, I'll point the kids movie library to this one, and the documentary movie library to that one. And the same with TV shows. The main TV show library will be pointed here, and the kids TV show library will be pointed there. And all of this info in this demonstration is all public domain movies or TV shows or even music. So it's not likely you're going to have multiple music libraries, but let me rename this to match the others. So just to keep the same theme, we'll have one music library inside the music library sort folder. Okay, so let's get DSM to the back burner. And again, here's my computer's file manager opened up to that folder on my NAS. And you can see what I've got in here. So the first couple, there's a couple early seasons of the Looney Tune collections that are public domain. I have these 3 TV series that are all public domain, or at least the seasons I have of them are. And then I have some public domain movies for each of the different type of movie libraries that will eventually get to. Alright, so you would follow Marius Hosting's instructions to get Portainer installed, and I have Portainer running. So what you'll do following the instructions is you will go to stacks and you'll create a stack. I've already done that. Let me full screen this window. And I'll click on editor. And this is basically a copy and paste from Marius's instructions. Only I've renamed my container from what he shows. Let me see about bringing these both in. Okay, so he's calling his container name Plex HW for hardware transcoding. And he has the same path to the Docker location for all the configuration files, all the application files of this install. But he has his own example of where he's pointing his media at, or where he's pointing the container to his media. So we both have volume 1, but I'm going to the mediaplexdocker share I showed you, and then this is basically the alias. He's calling it movies, and it's read-only access, and I'm calling it Plex Media. If I rename this to Plex Look Here Media, it would just stand out more of a sore thumb when you're looking for that once you're into Plex to add a library. So let's show how that'll change. Plex Media here, we'll call it. And again, this is an alias. So these two lines set up the IGPU to be used in the container, so I can have hardware transcoding with a Plex pass. Let's bring Marius's examples back in. He's in Eastern Europe, so his time zone is set for that, where mine's set for New York. And it's common to have these PUID and PGID numbers match. And he shows you how to check to see what yours are, and mine happened to be a match for his. I'm not a Docker expert, but these two lines handle permissions, unlike trying to get permissions going on a bare metal Ubuntu install. So once you have all this set, you simply click Update Stack, and I'll choose to pull a new image and redeploy. And we simply wait for that to finish. As you hear my tablet letting me know that I have Facebook Messenger notifications. Probably from the group I'm going to be posting this video in. So the stack was successfully deployed, and again, I'm not a pro YouTuber. My videos aren't monetized. They're simply to help show other Plex server owners how to do things. And this one is going to show how Docker is not really that hard on a Synology NAS. So if I go back, Plex shows is starting. I'm not going to go to it yet because it's just starting up, but I'm going to bring my server window in quickly. These are my two servers, well actually 3 servers, and if I bring that out and go back to DSM for this NAS and go into the package center, you'll see that I have an existing Plex Media server installed as a Synology package, but it's not running now. I can't easily have that running and create a Docker container for the same IP address without learning how to set up a new port number for the container running in Docker, or the Docker container, and that's just too much to show or to learn how to do. So that's why this is showing as unavailable. So that's my existing Plex install. My friends and family aren't connected to it. I just simply haven't reset this older NAS yet. Eventually it will be an off-site backup unit. So this is my main NAS everyone's connected to, and this is a little Unraid experiment on an Intel NUC that turned out so well. Eventually I'll move my main users over. Alright, so we're still showing Plex. Nope, we're showing Plex is healthy. So now what I'm going to do is someplace I have a window open with a URL in. So my local IP address for that NAS is 192.168.68.1116. So all services that run off from it is just going to have their own port number. Portainer is 9000. The NAS itself is 5000. And Plex is going to be 32400. So let's see what happens. Well, we're not starting up. Let's see if we start up this way. Okay, so with a full web index, we started up, and that's great. So I could have used a Plex claim number from a previous install, but we're just going to add this as a new server. So now I have to give it a friendly name. And again, that will be in comparison to how these other servers are named. So let me call this DSM 6.2. Oh, I'm in the wrong window. DSM 6.2 doc. And of course, I can't speak and type. So I am going to allow access to media outside my home. I've already forwarded the port for this IP address and, on my router, so I should be able to gain remote access on this server, just like the Plex package install does on the NAS. Alright, so I think I may just pause this until it gets through this next step. And it quickly got to that next step. So now we can add our libraries, and this is the important part. Let me bring Portainer back up wherever it is. This is the test to see if our mapping is correct. Again, this part is to the actual folder we're going to use as our Plex media folder, and this is what I would call an alias. So I'm going to add a library, and let's start with a movie library, and we'll just leave it named movies because that'll be our main one. So I'll browse for the media and see how we adjusted that to Plex media here. I'll click there, and now it sees the sort folders I have. So I'll click on movie libraries, and then I'll click into the folder I'm using as a sort folder, and here's all my public domain movies. And then I'll click add library, and if I wanted to edit it, now's the time to do it. And really the only reason you want to edit this is to decide how you're going to set up your collections. So I'll show the collections and make the automatic collection size 2. That's my preference. So then I'll hit next, and I'm basically done. I could add other libraries, so let's do that too. So let's add all the movie libraries, and we'll call this one Kids. And again, this is the alias we created. And I'll go into the sort folder for movies, pick the Kids, click add. And actually here under the advanced tab is where I'd want to set collections, not afterwards. I'll set that to 2. Click Add, do another library, the last movie one. We'll call this Docs. Again, we'll browse to the alias we created, click into my sort folder for movies, grab the documentary one, there's only one movie in that, click Add, hit Advanced, set our collection preference. So if I set it to disabled, it won't create collections based on collection entries at TMDB. If I set it to 1, if you have one movie that's part of a collection of 2 or 3 or 4 movies, it'll add that single movie to a collection, and I don't really like that. I don't want to see a collection created unless I have at least 2 movies. So that's why I'm setting it that way. We'll hit Next, and then I have to hit back again because I still need to add more libraries. We'll do TV shows. I'll leave that by default. Pick our alias, pick our TV show sort folder, pick the main one, and this is what I would do. I would hit Advanced. I name everything based on the entry at TVDB, and I always use the irred order. Even if I rip a show and it's in DVD order, I rename to irred order, and I would just change the default episode ordering to the TVDB. That's my preference. If you name to the movie database for your TV show episodes, leave this as is. There is no DVD order at the movie database, so I like to pull naming from the TV database because that's what I use as my guide. And if I really want to have one show to DVD ordering, I can adjust that on the show level. So this is the only default library setting change I make to a TV show library. So let's do the same thing with a kids TV show library. Okay, so our alias, our sort folder, and the actual library folder. We'll click Advanced, and I'll go down and change episode ordering. So now all we're left with is our music library. And we're just going to have one, so it'll just be called Music. And we'll browse. We'll enter the music sort folder library, or the music library sort folder, and click into our only actual music library. And there's no reason to change any of these default settings if you have good embedded metadata. A music library really does not depend on the folder structure and the naming of the media in those folders as much as it depends on the embedded metadata. If you rip your CDs, it'll have enough basic metadata where Plex will probably match up well to online sources, but I throw everything I rip into MusicBrainz Picard to just increase the available metadata, and it just gives Plex a great chance to scan things in properly. And if the album isn't in a database someplace, maybe you've got your own compilation album you put together, MusicBrainz Picard can set up the metadata properly, so Plex will scan that based on the embedded metadata, even though there's not a match. It's a lot of stuff, but I leave everything for default with a music library. So now I'll hit Next, and this tells you to get your apps. And let me go into the settings because you're going to see the libraries from all my other servers unless I do it this way. So we'll see that Plex is now detecting the intros and the end credits for these TV shows, just like we would want it to. But let's do this first. Let's go down to transcoder, and I'll click Use Hardware Acceleration when available, and I'll just leave everything by default. And this actually tells you what the iGPU is on that server, so you can just leave that to auto. I'll save changes, and I'll also click into remote access. So I'm going to have to hide my public IP address with this video, and I wish I had not clicked in now that I thought about that, but I can do that with YouTube. So now I have to look up the port I forwarded previously for that server, and hopefully I can do that off screen. No, I can't do it with my other Plex app window open, so I'll have to use my phone. And let me just pause this video while I look that number up. Okay, so I use 32300. Alright, so this takes about 30 to 60 seconds, so let me pause the video. And it's got remote access. So now we have remote access on all 3 servers, and I'll eventually nuke this container and start my old one back up. This was a little test server I did on my desktop computer where I am doing this video now. So we're all set. And let's go look at our library. So I'm going to do it from the Manage section. And if you haven't seen this before, this is a great feature. Just hover over the library, hit Manage Recommendations. If this was a server I was going to share with people, like my main server, you might want to push recently released movies to your users in your own home screens. And if you hate the idea of Plex pushing seasonal movie recommendations to you that are in your own library, this is where you get rid of that. So you can do the same thing for TV shows, manage recommendations, and I push recently released episodes to my own screen and my user's screen too. And you can just add whatever you want based on what's here, and you can also add a collection. If you create a collection, say your own Christmas movies, and you want to disable Plex's seasonal recommendations, well, you can add the collection to home, and then it'll appear here with options to then push to everybody's home. It's a pretty cool feature. But we're simply going to enter our new movie library this way, and as you can see, these public domain movies popped in here without an issue. So if I back up, I can go into the documentary library, and of course there's only the one movie that I added there. Go into the kids movie library pointed to, and of course I don't think anything has an automatic collection set up with these old public domain movies because they were just a one and done movie. So we'll go into the the regular TV show library, and I have my 3 shows, all public domain, and we'll enter the kids TV show library, and it only has the one, well, this isn't really a series, but it only has the one series entered. Plex created, I'm sorry, not Plex, the TVDB created an entry for all these old movie serials, which is what these really were. And if you think about it, the old movie serials predate TV shows. So when you went to the movies to see a feature presentation, you might see 2 or 3 or 4 quick 10-minute serials, 5-minute serials. And when you went back to another movie, they might have the continuing episode for the next serial that you saw to the previous movie. It was a little gimmick to get people to go back to and see a movie they might not want to, because they might be interested in these old serials. And the cartoons were serials. There was an old Batman, Flash Gordon, and there were Western serials. So this was just a little marketing ploy to get media in front of people and to encourage them to see the next movie. So really the precursor to TV shows. And then we'll back up. The music example is pretty sketchy because it's not like I really have an artist I can show multiple albums under, but because I doctored these music group or these music folders in MKV toolnix, they show up the way I wanted to. So Plex is pulling this image for Clara Smith, and I inserted this into the metadata so it would show an album, just so it would scan nicely. This doesn't match with anything, but this album is inserted in the metadata by me so it displays. And this is like a little shareware, freeware music album I found on the internet that doesn't have any copyright associated with it. And it was actually in the Music Brains Picard database, so I could just inject better metadata into it. So unfortunately, it's not the greatest artist representation, and the one album is considered a various artist album. But anyway, I think this is a good little primer, and the nice thing about this setup with Docker, let me go back to DSM, is if you had installed Plex this way on the older version of DSM, there is no nightmare scenario where Plex won't work if you upgrade to DSM7. And also, this is portable. There's really no great reason to run Plex in a Docker container over a Synology package besides the fact that it's portable. You can set Docker up on any other system and move this. Basically, all you have to do is back up this folder, and then you move it to the new system where Docker's already is installed, and you set up a new stack. And as long as you adjust these volumes correctly, now this one's easy. This is going to be to the new Docker/Plex folders. And this one isn't hard either. You're really just pointing to new real folders, and you keep the same alias here. So when Plex starts up, it really just has all the same information it needs with only this part changing, and you don't have to set anything up. You don't lose your collections, you don't use your watch history. This is what makes Docker so great. And let's end with Portainer. So when it comes time to do a Plex update, when you're notified of one, you simply go into your containers, and let's click on the right container, click on Plex, stop it, and you'll see that I'll lose access to it. So it's gone. It's got the red triangle because it's not running. So now you simply click Recreate, slide the tab over to repull the image, click Recreate, and you wait for the status to say successful, and it will be marked as starting. Just refresh once in a while, and when this changes to running, you should be able to access the server again, and that's as hard as it is to update to a new Plex version. You don't download a file, you don't do anything. And to be honest, I have not had any problems with Plex on my newer Synology NAS installed this way. The one thing I don't know, because I haven't had a problem, is I don't know how to revert to a previous container, but I just suppose if I ever feel the need to do that, I'll look it up. And if you happen to be watching this and you're a better Docker expert than I am, which isn't hard, create your own little video showing all of us how to revert to a previous container. Just don't say it's easy and give us, a one-sentence description that we then have to figure out. Come and show us. So let's refresh. So it's now marked as running. And before I even got back here, I've got the green lock. So I know this is a long video, and just before it ends, I do want to show you, let's get rid of this so we can see better. This is my 2-month-old 2.5-month-old install of Plex in a container under Unraid on a little 11th gen Intel NUC. Now if I go to Docker, none of this is hard either, and this is even easier to update. You'll see my Plex container says up to date. If I want to update my channel's DVR container, I just click apply update and say yes, update it, and this is as easy as can be to update a container. It doesn't get any easier. And surprisingly, setting up Unraid was easier than setting up a container in Plex and having to learn how to follow instructions from Marius's website. So I just updated that. And if I click on the Plex container and I click edit, go to the advanced view and slide down, show more settings. The only thing different about setting this container up is that I need a path for every library type. So by default, when you install this same Linux server container in Unraid, you've got a predetermined path to fill out for TV and movies. Well, I had to add a path for music, photos, and videos. And let's get on it. Well, let's not get on it here. So the extra parameter line handles the driver for accessing my iGPU, along with a couple other things you have to do. This part of this line transcodes to RAM. So you do have to install, let's see, installed apps. You do have to install GPU statistics and Intel GPU top in order to get hardware transcoding going. I don't mean for this to be a little Unraid primer too, but it really is an opportunity to show you how easy it is. So where is the next setting that I'm looking for? So this tells the GPU statistics, which I can never say the word, to use Intel versus AMD or NVIDIA. And I think there was another thing. If I click on Docker, no, I think there's another setting that I'm missing now that tells the container to use the iGPU. But I'm not sure where that setting is now. But if we go back to main, even though this is an Intel NUC that only has an option for 2 hard drives, I'm using Unraid without an array, and I needed a flash drive to substitute as my one physical storage drive. Unraid boots off a flash drive and then runs in memory, and looking into all the instructions for Unraid, you want to use a quality flash drive, and there's a problem with certain cruiser drives, so stay away from the SanDisk ones. You may not have a problem, but if there's a small chance you do, don't take it. I used eBay to buy this Fit 32 gigabyte drive. It was shipped from China because nobody else had one, just to have a quality flash drive that was small in size. You don't need a large flash drive. So because I'm not using a storage array, I did use the 2 different types of SSDs in the Unraid or in the Intel NUC to create a shared cache pool to then run Docker on. So let's jump back to the Plex Docker. If I go into the settings, by default, let's see, where am I? Let's show more settings. Okay, again, this is off the top of my head because I'm just not, oh, it's right here. By default, this is going to point towards storage, and whatever the default is, you just have to change it to cache. And then that points to the shared cache pool. So the primary drive is a NVMe, so I just bought a 500 gigabyte quality one, and then I bought a 500 gigabyte typical SATA SSD, and I should not have used a Corsair. I learned there's a bug in the Corsair SATA SSD drives that throws a meaningless error up in Unraid, and I had to learn how to dismiss that error to not be bugged by it. So I probably should have bought a different brand, but you learn as you go, right? So there's no storage in this. There's just a shared cache pool, which sounds funny because you think of cache as something that will disappear when you turn the device off, but it doesn't. So my containers run on this, and my actual channels DVR actually records to this cache pool, and I don't care because I don't record many shows. I kind of use that to time shift, and channels DVR automatically deletes a program after it's watched, and it just leaves one watched program on, deletes everything else. So I'm not really recording much on here. I do use this to sometimes move something out of here to then trim on my desktop computer to then put on my Plex server, because I like to collect these great performances and American experiences and that kind of stuff. So really, this is great. Unraid is better than I ever thought it would be, and I love the Synology NAS ecosystem for my storage. And whether you want a Docker container running on a Synology NAS that has an Intel iGPU, or whether you just want to buy a big Synology NAS to put your media on, you can use Unraid with Docker to point back to it. You can create your own NAS with Unraid. I understand it's a pretty good system. I like the security that's built into Synology, but I would not knock somebody for using Unraid. So I know this is an incredibly long video, but if you're interested in a Docker container from either the Synology perspective or using Unraid to get a whole server going, or just to use for a Plex server like I am that points someplace else, I just wanted to show that none of this is rocket science, and it's all pretty easy, and you've got the resources you need. And like I said, I'll put Marius's link into the description. I'll put a link in for Unraid, and it's just not as hard as it may seem to everybody. And just resist the hype. Docker is not better just to be Docker, but to have it be portable, it's a fantastic solution. Thanks for watching.